Hi, we're It'll Be Alright in the 90s, and you're not. I'm Stu the Fridge Joslin, and joining me as always is Alex Primetime Greenwood. Greenie, how are you tonight, mate?
I'm blockbuster, thanks. Absolutely blockbuster. I'm sensing a sort of an American twang to your intro. Am I right?
Yes, you did, because tonight we're padding up, hitting the gridiron and scoring some big old touchdowns as we explore the world of American football in the 90s with one of our favourite returning guests. We actually had a surprise meet in person a couple of weekends ago, didn't we?
We did indeed, yeah. I was carefully carrying some drinks back to my seat at the Bath Forum and heard Greenwood called out from the seat behind me, and lo and behold, there you were with wife of the pod.
Yep, absolutely. It was really good to see you walking past, because I had no idea that you would be there. We'd gone to see Sarah Pascoe, by the way, listeners down there at the Bath Forum, and I didn't know Alex would be there, and he didn't know I would be there. So made all the more special by the fact that you'd been to see your beloved Canaries earlier in the day and still had the shirt with you as well.
True, yeah. I thought I should take it off just because I was at the theatre, so I thought not the place for a football shirt, but I did come back to your seat and show you proudly my 96-97 Mitre Canaries home shirt, which I think you appreciated. But it wasn't just us two there, was it? Because Joey Jojo Jr. Bartle was also secreted somewhere at the back that I never actually saw him. But
we formed a podcast triumvirate, but unfortunately not all the three of us met up. I don't think Joe actually met up with either of us. So we were all in the room enjoying the show, and it has to be said, I think Sarah might be a listener to the pod. She stole a bit of our gear, didn't she? Or she was veering close to it.
Yeah, she was talking about the Millennium. Was it the Millennium Bug she was talking about?
A lot of talk about the Millennium Bug.
Yeah,
absolutely.
She's definitely our material, but we let her off, didn't we? Because we are fans. So.
Absolutely, we are. And it won't be long until I return to the forum to go and catch up with friend of the pod, Dan Donnelly, of course. I'm going to go and represent us next week when the Levellers come to play at the forum. So look out for a report back from that in due course. Before we go any further, just a quick word from our sponsor tonight, which is Made in America of Hathaway Retail Park in Chippenham, Wessex's one-stop Yankee shop for everything from root beer to Ray-Bans. Listeners to It'll Be Alright in the 90s can quote the code ALRIGHT90s at the checkout to receive 10% off the ticket price of any NFL team merchandise purchased. So many thanks to the guys at Made in America for sorting that out for us.
I love that shop. I used to go there all the time. Usually when my dad was in Texas or something, I'd go pop in there.
Hold on, Texas, as in Texas the state, or Texas the
hardware store. Yeah.
Texas the hardware, of course. Texas Home Care, of course.
yeah, which I think was on the same retail park.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd go and I'd browse the baseball bats and the American sweets, and I used to buy my sunglasses in there as well. They'd have a stand that had various cool sunglasses, and I would always go for the ones that made me look like a Formula One driver. Well, it didn't make me look like a Formula One driver, but the style that Formula One drivers were wearing in the late 90s, the sort of wraparound style. Yeah, I loved that shop. I did also buy my first American football in there, which I might get to in a bit, but great shop.
Brilliant. I used to buy, I used to go in there when we visited the retail park, and I remember buying these things called fire picks, which were like wooden toothpicks, but they were coated with like a cinnamon paste, or I don't know how you would describe it, but they say yes, they were fire picks because they were really hot when you put them in your mouth. So I used to enjoy chewing on those.
There has been a little bit of 90s news, hasn't there, Stu? We are recording this. Well, this episode is going to come out a little bit late for this to be considered news, but of course we have witnessed the sad demise of one of the country's finest fizzy soda pops.
A knife through my heart, mate.
Yeah. You did alert me through WhatsApp that you bought possibly the last bottle on the shelves in the whole of Wessex.
I think I certainly had the last bottle in Chippenham. Yes, the last Thursday doing the food shop, I spotted it on the shelf there, and I thought it has to be. It was meant to be. So I bought it, and I'm currently. I did think about keeping it sealed, maybe putting it in a loft, out of sight, out of mind, and letting it age and grow in value. But then I decided I needed to taste Lilt one more time as Lilt before it becomes Fanta, pineapple, and grapefruit. So, but yeah, very, very sad news, and it's pretty needless, isn't it? I mean, on a serious note, isn't it needless?
It is needless. I don't understand why they're doing it. I suppose it's. I hadn't realised actually that Lilt was only for sale in certain countries, including the UK, obviously. but not in America, and well, not for most of the world. So I'm guessing they're going to try and expand its range by making it into Fanta and then spreading it around. But why they couldn't just do that under the Lilt branding, I don't know. It's a travesty, really, and I and the pod will be severing all ties with the Coca-Cola Corporation as a result.
It's yet another boycott from Italy right in the 90s. Yeah. Have we spoken to Sainsbury's about bringing Geo back yet? That was our main choice, wasn't it, for a replacement?
Yes, it definitely, yeah. I think communications have yet to be exchanged, but we will be getting in touch soon to try and get that brought back as the soda pop of the UK with the totally tropical taste that we're now missing from Lilt.
Excellent. Jeff's on the job.
There was also some other news regarding your loft and a particular VHS tape, wasn't there?
Yes, there was. So, listeners, it's a long story, but I bought an issue of 442 magazine on eBay last week, which comes with a free VHS. It's ITV Sports A to Z Guide to France 98, which I had at the time. And I've been waiting for somebody to upload it to YouTube ever since so I can enjoy it again. But unfortunately, they haven't. So I've taken matters into my own hands, managed to get hold of the tape in question. But now all I need is a VCR to digitize it, and get it out there again for everyone to enjoy. So I went to my dad and I said, "Have you got a VCR in the loft?" He said, "I'll check." And a couple of days later, I got a message, got the VCR down, but Jimmy Tarbuck is stuck in it. So and I've since got the said VCR and managed to remove said tape. Unfortunately, the VCR was past saving, past repair. But yes, Jimmy Tarbuck's Nightmare Holes of Golf 2 has been extracted from the VCR, and I'll probably digitize that as well. I've got a new system coming. It's in the post at the moment. I picked it up for a few pennies. So yeah, look out for that. And we might publish them on the podcast channel actually. Yeah. As some 90s relics for everyone to enjoy. So yeah, I think we'll do that.
Yeah, nice work. All in the cause of 90s nostalgia and revivals.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I really wanted to save the old VCR. I tried my best to be delicate, but in the end, as I said to you at the time, when all else fails, you have to get the hammer out. And I had to be a little less subtle and in order to save the tape. But I have done, and very exciting times. I'll keep everyone updated on my VHS Odyssey. Right, a little bit of correspondence then.
Yes, we do have a bit of correspondence. I'm just gonna.
Superb! Is that a Caffrey's?
Of course it is. Official brown ale of the pod. No, sorry. Official. Hang on, let me just check the pod ledger here. Official Irish ale of the pod, Caffrey's. Just being opened there by myself. Just to read out the correspondence. It's always nice to have something to sip. Keep my my throat nice and lubricated for your mailbag. So I've got a quick thing here from a friend of the pod, Hannah Kelly, who is catching up with the pod back catalogue, as we urged everyone to do in the break between our Series 1 and Series 2. And she says she's just been listening to the Argos catalogue episode. And she says, I had a black and white TV in my bedroom in the 90s. There was no remote, so I had to get up to change the channel. The channel and volume buttons gave a satisfying click when you pressed them. I then progressed to a colour TV with built-in DVD player and a karaoke machine, which sounds like, well, both those items sound like wonderful relics of technological days gone past. I mean, black and white TVs, I think we maybe have mentioned them before, but that sounds so of a different era, doesn't it? That should be like the 50s or something, but
it really does, yeah.
It was in our childhood. I did ask her what her speciality was in terms of the karaoke machine. And she said that she was a big fan of Kylie and Jason. So I've managed to get her and husband of the pod, Craig, to promise that they will perform a medley of Kylie and Jason hits at our summer party. So
superb. I look forward to that.
That's going to be something to look forward to, yeah.
Excellent, yeah. Well, it'll take up a few minutes on the episode as well. So that's that's already in the bank. That's what we like.
What have you got over there?
I've got some little bits from our regular correspondent, Alex Mitchell. He says that the All Right 90s charity workout video has surely got to be produced. You've got the Reebok Step already. Yes, we do know where we can get hold of a Reebok Step, Alex, and we are looking into it. He also says, I didn't remember that urban myth, re the pencils up the nose, which we spoke about on the last episode. He was in the same RE class as me. And he goes on to say, didn't he know that you just have to put the pencils up there as well as pants on your head and say wibble, and then you're immediately excused from the exam?
True. That is true. Good
Thanks
reference.
for getting in touch, as always, Alex.
This is from Legend of the Pod, Kate Pro. It's been a while since we've had Legend of the Pod, Kate, sending in a message. So nice to hear from you, Kate. And this is related to exercise tapes, which I think we referenced with Beverly Callard a few episodes back.
Call her by a proper name.
Okay, sorry. Beverly's Bollards, or Beverly Bollard. So Kate says, mum of Legend of the Pod, Angela, and her best friend Karen used to exercise to Lizzie Webb's video cassette in their living room, and the music that accompanied the exercise of Lizzie Webb had some pretty racy lyrics, and they were so macho, big and strong, enough to turn me on. So these were the lyrics that were being blared around Legend of the Pod Kate Pro's childhood living room, which I think is quite racy. But she says that she eventually, her mum gave up the Lizzie Webb exercise video and replaced it with one of those little trampolines, which she says does prove that they still exist. Because I think you asked this on one of the previous What's the Most 90s fitness, I think it was a Fitness Faz one, wasn't it?
I did.
You questioned whether they still exist, and it turns out they do.
Well, there you go. Thanks so much, Kate, for letting us know. Very much appreciated. I can sleep easy at night now. It's called a trampette, isn't it? I believe that's
what it's called?
I think that's the correct terminology. Yes. But no, nice to know they're still out there.
Time now for What's the Most 90s, and for the first time we've got some real life guests with us, haven't we, Stu? This is a first for the pod.
We do indeed. It's a complete thrill.
So hello and welcome to Jack and Roddy from the How Many Geese podcast. How are you guys doing?
Very good.
Yeah, very good. Thanks for having us.
Oh, thanks for coming on, guys. It's a pleasure to have you.
Yeah,
Don't worry about it.
I think this is an intriguing What's the Most 90s, and I think it's good that we've got some real life guests to talk about this, because this is the inspiration actually came from brother of the pod, Adam, so I should give him a shout out. Because today we're going to ask what's the most 90s animal. So a little bit out there. No, this isn't pop culture or TV or films or anything like this. This is something, a little bit different. So let's start with you, Jack. What do you think the most 90s animal is?
We're experienced with answering these kind of questions, is what I say. Is we get people who ask us all sorts of questions on our podcast, and we have answered. When I was thinking back through the things that we have spoken about, we did once, and I was like, what's the most 90s thing that we have discussed? We cast the Spice Girls as animals. Now,
okay, interesting.
The Spice Girls, can you get more 90s than the Spice Girls? You guys are the experts on that, but they're pretty 90s.
Well, that's definitely the next one, isn't it? What's the most 90s thing? I think it's probably the next one we should do.
Final episode, we'll do that.
Surely that's your great crescendo. After years of research, you can finally present your thesis.
There we go. We finally got something to work towards.
So we did cast the Spice Girls as animals, and I listened back to that episode, but I don't think one of the individual animals necessarily encapsulates the 90s as a whole. But I'll tell you what we came with for the Spice Girls. So we had Baby Spice, which was a little bush baby. We had Sporty Spice, which was a cheetah. We had Ginger Spice, which was a maned wolf, which, if you don't know what a maned wolf is, it's like, imagine like a really thin wolf on stilts and ginger, as the name suggests.
It's like a long fox.
Yeah, like it's been on a rack.
Yeah.
So fox. We had, what are the other ones? Posh Spice was a secretary bird, which is like an eagle on stilts. There's a lot of leggy things that we ended up with on there. And then the final one was Scary Spice, which is an animal I don't really expect you to have heard of, called a vinegaroon, which is it looks like a little scorpion, but without the long tail. And it looks pretty frightening. Now, I don't think any of those particularly sit within the 90s. So the one I was thinking of is terrapins as being my most 90s animal. Roddy, do you know? I see you nodding. I wonder if you know where I'm going with this.
I think are you going with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles?
I am.
Yes.
Yeah. So
Okay.
Always welcome
terrapins.
in these parts.
Yeah.
Look, there, you see, you can see in the background there.
Yes,
There's Michelangelo
yes,
on the bookcase. So yeah, so the reason I've gone for terrapins as my sort of nomination was terrapins are native of places like North America, but we have quite a lot of them living wild and feral in the UK. And that's because during the height of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles craze, which I was absolutely obsessed with when I was a kid, and the cartoon, loads of people went out and bought terrapins. And of course they grow, and people didn't have tanks big enough for them. And now lots of canals and lakes and things like that in the UK are full of terrapins. And the reason they were brought here was because lots of people, were obsessed with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and bought their kids pet terrapins.
That is a fantastic answer. That didn't occur to me at all. That is a great answer, because I'm not sure if I've read, maybe I'm just thinking of what you just said about people buying them, but the turtles themselves, are they not based on, this doesn't make sense because they're turtles, but I had an idea that they were like red, what's that type of terrapin called? A
red-eared slider.
Red-eared slider, yeah.
Yeah, but is that what they're based on, the real things? I'm not the real things, they're not real, but the characters are based on that, because that doesn't make sense. I don't know.
No, you're exactly right. The Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles they're not sea turtles, as we know. They are terrapins, and that's because over in America, terrapins were quite a popular pet that you could get hold of, whereas you can't just go and buy sea turtles. But yeah, a terrapin, if you don't know what a terrapin is, it's sort of like a cross between, it's like a small sort of river turtle almost, but they don't have the big long flippers in the same way that sea turtles do. But yeah, they are based on red-eared sliders, which are terrapins. Yeah.
Terrapins, of course, also not naturally ninjas, just to clarify that as well. Small freshwater river dwelling, not ninjas.
They need the radioactive ooze.
The ooze.
Exactly.
That's what unlocks that.
Okay, Roddy, what about you?
Yeah, well, it's a nice sort of segue that Jack has sort of set up almost with the children's TV, because, of course, looking back on my experience of the 90s, I mean, my brain sort of went everywhere with this at first, but the one that I settled on, a bit about where it went everywhere, just to touch on them. I mean, I didn't know how flexible we could be with animal, but like all of the Pokemon, I'm putting under there. So that's 150 odd straight off the bat. I then thought of all of the like cereal box animals, Tony the tiger, the Cocoa Pops chimp, any and all of those. But it was then kind of pointed out to me that a lot of those actually started their lives in previous decades. Apparently Tony the tiger's been around for ages, despite being, I would think, incredibly 90s. I don't know what happened in the 90s that they had a slight, rebrand or upskill or whatever. Sugar Puff Monster, another one, but unclear, what that is.
I think it's quite clear. It's the Sugar Puff Monster.
Yeah. From Sugar Puffy Eye Monster, eh?
It's the Honey Monster, isn't he? Isn't that his full name, the Honey Monster?
I've never been properly introduced, so
you have to work in 90s nostalgia to get in.
He was definitely the Honey Monster when he played up front for Newcastle in that advert. I think he just had Monster on the back of his shirt, actually.
Okay, so, his first name's Honey, yeah.
So he's rebranded the first name, perhaps, but he's stuck with the family. Okay.
Yeah.
But I came out at, of all of this, aardvarks, because I think they've got two pillars for the 90s in the form of Otis the aardvark, which some people I've ran this past before couldn't act. They either didn't believe that this happened, or are you putting your hand up because you don't believe, know, or remember?
Who's Otis the aardvark?
Oh,
okay,
man.
well, right, we will circle back. But Otis the aardvark is one who, despite you not knowing who he is, was quite clearly an aardvark. But then there's also Arthur the aardvark, because Arthur is apparently meant to be, as in Hey Arthur, is apparently meant to be an aardvark, despite, frankly, not looking like an aardvark at all, and just being a sort of hamster with ambition. But yeah, so I've gone with aardvark, and I've got a couple others in the back of my head which I can pull out and chuck out in a sec. But does anyone, Stu or Alex, just with your 90s knowledge, want to flesh out Otis, perhaps? Or
his modern day equivalent would be Hacker the dog, wouldn't it? If we're comparing them with a modern, so a puppet co-presenter for CBBC. Who would his predecessor have been? Are we going back to Gordon the Gopher before him, or is
I haven't
it
a clue, but there was Basil
Oh.
Brush.
I've just Googled Otis the Aardvark, and
Yeah?
I'm definitely familiar with.
Yeah, Basil Brush, Ed the Duck, of course, Andy
Yep.
Peters, nemesis and a colleague, and there was a banana. Do you remember the banana? The banana crossed over with Ed the Duck.
The what?
There was a banana puppet that was in a broom cupboard with Andy Crane and that lot.
You have made that up.
No, I haven't
God,
made
it was
that up.
deranged, wasn't it? Yeah.
This was probably late 80s, early 90s. Maybe I shouldn't mention. It got phased out, I think, and
Right. Okay.
bananas waned in popularity, and
And the cocaine was running thin.
We'll get Andy Crane on as a guest. You can confirm this. Okay, so should we move on to? So yeah, Roddy, you've got some more which we might come back to in the course of the conversation. But Stu, do you want to say who you've got?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've also gone for a cultural link. So continuing that theme. My first thought actually was the Pepperami from the adverts, because he's a bit of an animal.
You're pushing it there. Come on.
But I am pushing it there. I then thought about hedgehogs and echidnas for obvious reasons. But in the end,
Hang on. Sorry, what's the obvious reason for an echidna? That's
Knuckles. Knuckles the
Sorry?
echidna. Sonic and Knuckles. Knuckles the echidna.
Oh, Knuckles is an echidna.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
I know.
That is right, isn't it, guys? I haven't made that up.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah. In everyone's life, there's a before knowing that fact and an after knowing that fact. So I'm
And we've
very
just
glad
seen
you
it
can
happen.
reset your calendar, Alex, to
Cross that Rubicon live on air.
Exactly.
But what I've gone for is a lion, and in particular a baby lion, because I ended up thinking about the golden age of Disney animal movies, which was, of course, the mid-90s. The Rescuers, Homeward Bound, the Goofy movie, one of my personal favourites. 101 Dalmatians, to name but a few. But obviously, The Lion King is by far the most well-known and most well-regarded of these. And so I had no hesitation in picking young Simba as my most 90s animal.
Can I have a point of information on Goofy? What is he? Because I've heard that he's a cow.
I've
Wow.
seen this theory as well. He's a dog, right?
Yes.
Until
he's a-
you see the theory that he's a cow, in which case you're like,
Is he a cow?
yeah.
Because like there's Mickey and Minnie, Mouse and Mouse. The two ducks are both ducks, and then Goofy's meant to be paired up with Daisy the cow or something.
Oh, I don't know.
Oh.
I have seen a picture that's drawing the parallels of that he looks like a cow.
And Pluto is like a dog.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So then for Goofy to be some kind of more sentient dog, like I don't know, does it stack up? But
Yeah, Pluto is owned by Goofy, isn't he?
Yeah.
I think so. Just another point of interest here. Disneyland Paris about 4 years ago, the guy in the Pluto costume was not getting a lot of attention at all. So I went and had a little photo with him and an arm around Pluto, and just.
You should have asked him what species he was.
I should have done. Yeah, I missed a trick there, didn't I? I did have a couple of seconds with Pluto, but there you go. Never mind. Next time, maybe. Next time.
Well, I'm surprised. I'm glad that you've all gone for different things. I was expecting there possibly to be some synergy here, because I have gone for dolphins, which I think are by far the most 90s animal. I'm quite confident with this. I don't have any. I suppose there aren't any cartoon characters as such, but there's Echo the Dolphin, one of the
Of course,
most famous early 90s computer games.
the most frustrating computer game of all time.
Yeah.
I would wager.
As discussed on an earlier episode of the pod. And then there's Flipper. I know it was originally a 60s film, then it was remade in 96 with Elijah Wood. But beyond that, I think it's more to do with stationery. I'm thinking this is a hardcore stationary animal. It was over so many pencil cases in the 90s. It was on posters, it was in stickers.
Dreamcatchers.
Dreamcatchers, yeah. It's sort of market stalls you'd get in the 90s that would be selling sweatshirts and t-shirts, and it'd be wolves, bison, dolphins, not unicorns, but yeah, dolphins. So I just think it was sort of an aesthetic animal of the 90s. I found this just before we came on. I have my dolphin pencil case.
Oh, look at that.
Very good.
Which I still
Very
use.
good. Got props.
Yeah, and I just think it's that aesthetic thing. I I was looking it up just before we started recording, and there's an artist called Lisa Frank who did lots of stationery designs and stuff in the 90s in America, but I think they probably came over here as well. And if you look up Lisa Frank art, you'll know what I mean. We'll post some on our social media, but yeah, that's my choice really for those reasons.
That's a good one.
Lovely. Yeah, when you started talking, my brain, before even registering Echo or Flipper, went to pencil cases. Yeah. So, yeah, and the kind of rulers, the holographic rulers.
Yes, it is definitely the most lenticular animal, isn't it?
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
Perfect, because it's like you can do it as it's coming out of the water, back and forth.
Yeah.
Is it the most tattooed 90s animal also?
Oh, yeah. Maybe.
I think dolphin tattoos were very, very popular.
What was it about the night? Because, animals, it's not like for a cartoon or something, they're released and they gain popularity or whatever. It wasn't like dolphins were suddenly released in the 90s.
No.
Like, what is it about an animal that suddenly gains traction in a particular... why did the dolphin speak to people in the 90s in a way it didn't in any other decade?
And then that got replaced by sort of tribal designs as the tattoo du jour, I suppose, in the early 2000s, and so on and so forth.
So Chinese script, I think, after that.
So if you guys were to, because like Jack mentioned at the start, we get asked a lot of questions on our podcast with people send us in, what animals would be the Spice Girls, what animal would be X, Y, and Z, the best to have in a bank heist. And we usually approach the question with a kind of like, well, what do you need in a bank heist? What makes, the Spice Girls is a bit obvious, but getting to the root of the question. So how would you guys actually describe like nostalgia aside, what is 90s?
Yeah, the essence of.
The essence of. What are the pillars? Is it a mood? Is it a flavour, a scent?
Blimey. If we can't answer this, I think we ought to pack up.
I'd say it's a vibe. More than a pillar or a flavour, it's a vibe. Crikey, that's a big question. That's sort of an existential question for the podcast, isn't it? What are we doing, Stu? What's this all about?
I don't know what to say. This is caught us totally on the hop, hasn't it? Can we answer this in a couple of weeks?
we can circle back, whatever. But I was just wondering, because you might have said like, we said, for example, lenticular. That was big in the 90s. There could be an animal out there which none of us have thought of, but is actually 90s in a way which isn't nostalgic about the 90s, which wasn't on children's TV, but actually in its own essence is representing the 90s better than any of us could have predicted. The 60s, for example, tie-dye, flamboyant, loud. There's going to be some bird out there which is going to tick all those boxes. 2008, economic disaster. I'm sure we can find a very depressing animal which could represent the financial crisis. And I just wondered if there was a 90s, theme that might be out there in an animal as yet unthought of.
I suppose it's like a free period of sort of relative peace in the world, wasn't it? And liberation and stuff like that. So it's a question for our listeners that we can be musing on this for a while, can't we?
Fantastic deflection.
Yeah.
That was world class.
Speaking of our listeners, shall we move on to our correspondence? Because we did put this question out before we recorded and we got some feedback. So I've actually been supported here by a few people on the Dolphins thing. Flutter by Art Studio. That sounds like an art studio who probably does pictures of dolphins. Anna Solismore, Kayfabe, Vicky Trundle and brother of the pod, Adam, all said dolphins. Vicky also said killer whales. I mean, you've got Free Willy, haven't you? And those sort of paintings and posters would often have killer whales in there as well. Haughty Hannah said every WWF giant panda, which is a good shout. That logo big in the 90s. I don't know when they introduced the giant panda logo. I'm sure that will come to everyone's mind pretty quickly when I say that. But then Hannah later said, my brother has informed me that Gordon the Gopher is the most 90s animal, which is a good shout. We have talked about kids' TV puppets. And I think Gordon the Gopher did actually have style. Like he wore sunglasses and maybe tracksuit bottoms and white trainers. I remember that. So he actually had some 90s style.
Hawaiian shirts comes to mind as well for some reason.
And boxing gloves. So he was always wearing boxing gloves. What's that all about? It was just a brawler.
Hawaiian shirt and some boxing gloves. He's ready for anything.
Yeah, that's it.
Emma Everdream said, I couldn't emotionally cope with animals of farthing wood then, and I certainly can't now. which is a good shout. All the animals from Animals of Farthingwood were very 90s, especially Weasel. Because I think Weasel in the cartoon was a ladette, wasn't she? If you think about it, she had a bit of moxie about her. David Brown Wildlife Photography said, purely due to Jim Carrey, all I can think of is that little capuchin monkey. And then also with little monkeys, you can also think of Ross and Friends, because he had a little capuchin monkey, I think, didn't he? Marcel. Yeah. And then finally, Giorgio Moroso, friend of the pod, said the Tamworth pigs. So this is a not topical, but a news story of the time, wasn't it? Does everyone remember the Tamworth 2?
No.
They escaped from an abattoir, didn't they? And they went on the run. It
was in Wessex, so close to our hearts, me and Stu. Yes. So yeah, it was a pair of pigs who escaped on the way to an abattoir, as Stu said, in Malmesbury, Wiltshire, in January 1998. Went on the run. Was big tabloid news story. I was reading about it just before coming on air. Yeah, it was just a big thing in the news. They were missing for a week, and eventually they were caught and saved by the Daily Mail, of all people.
Oh, wow.
And then they saw out their days in an animal shelter until, I think one died in 2010, and then the other one died fairly shortly afterwards. They were nicknamed, what were they nicknamed?
The Sunbad Kid.
And yeah, so that's a nice news story answer to the question. So yes, thank you for all of your correspondence out there, but do keep sending it in. Just because we've done the episode doesn't mean we don't want to hear from you. So you can send them in the usual place.
Can I just row back briefly to your point on the weasel character from the Animals of Farthingwood?
Yeah.
You said that they were a bit of a ladette. They had a bit of moxie.
Mm-hmm.
Are we saying that the weasel is the animal of the 90s?
Oh, wow.
Have we answered our own question? Or has our correspondent who suggested the Animals of Farthingwood answered that question?
A weasel in a tracksuit with a lenticular ruler. And
spot on.
It's really starting to come together. Yeah.
Yeah. With a pair of boxing gloves on.
Yeah. Can I give an honourable shout out? More than an honourable shout out, I think. So I mentioned I had, a couple thoughts and pinged around a bit. Honey Puff Monster, Pokemon, the real stand-ups. But I came out at one in particular animal, like an individual animal itself, which I think represents the 90s or is peak 90s, and that's Dolly the sheep.
Oh, yes. Great shout.
That's really good.
Who, born 1996, has surely got to be the most famous individual animal of the 90s.
Yeah, and groundbreaking, and that's a really good shout.
Yeah, ushered in a millennium, well done, Dolly. Yeah.
Absolutely brilliant final answer. Yeah, I mean, I do think there's a possibility of an episode here of just talking about the world of animals in the 90s. So maybe something we should think about planning. But for now, that's a great final answer, Roddy. So guys, before we go, do you want to just tell everyone about your podcast and where we can find it?
Yeah, well, as a kind of 90s bridge in a sense, we are How Many Geese. We're kind of like a really wild show for grown-ups in a sense. We've described ourselves also as Spring Watch meets QI in a pub and argues about how many badgers they could take in a fight.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've got anything to add to that, Jack, about the kind of stuff we talk about.
Yeah, I mean, we answer our episodes are sort of broken into sections where we discuss sort of topics that we've come across, whether they be like news topics or scientific topics or just things that we find interesting. And we answer questions from the audience, like Roddy's already mentioned, like what animal would make the best X, Y, Z, or what animal would, help you in a certain situation. And then we're named after the segment in the middle of the show where we work out how many of a particular animal we could take in a fight.
Yeah. So yeah, Spotify, Google, Apple, whatever, wherever we're there, come listen.
Great stuff. Yeah, we'll put a link in the episode description so everyone can find it. We have been listening to previous episodes and I can testify that it is a brilliant podcast. So do go and give it a listen. Guys, thank you so much for coming on, being our first ever live guests for What's the Most 90s.
Thanks so much.
Thank you. It's been great.
One, so.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys. It's a welcome return tonight for one of our most frequent guests. He's got 2 podcast rings already, and he's back for a 3rd. Here to talk us through his experiences following and watching American football in the 90s, It's a big welcome back to Dad of the Pod, Glyn Joslin. How you doing, mate?
Hi guys, how you doing? Yeah, good.
Yeah,
Good to have you back.
Yeah,
I want to start. There's a couple of things we need to cover before we get into things.
Yeah.
First of all, an apology for the Question of Sport board game debacle. The last time you were on.
It was an experience.
Well, it was, wasn't it?
It was.
Yeah.
It's just if you don't try it, you don't know, as they say.
What did George say in his correspondence? A lesson learned. That's it. It goes on our lessons learned register.
Yeah.
I think we should have tried it out first before we actually did.
Well, maybe, yeah,
just
but
to see
then
how it went.
it's a hallmark of the pod, really.
That's
isn't
right.
it?
Yeah.
The other thing is, any memories of Made in America, our sponsor for tonight?
Yeah. It was a good little shop, that, wasn't it? It wasn't just clothing, because you couldn't get the Hershey bars anywhere either, and other American type candy, and stuff like that. And that was the only place you get it now. Of course, you get Reese's or whatever in Sainsbury's and all that sort of thing. But yeah, it was a good little place. Yeah, it was, and just enjoy going up there.
Excellent. Well, we're here tonight to talk about American football in the 90s, and I suppose specifically following American football in the 90s when it didn't have the coverage that it does now in the UK. So first of all, what we wanted to know is how you sort of came across and got into NFL in the first place when you were living in Wiltshire in the 1980s. How did that filter down?
Well, I have to take you back a little bit further.
Okay.
To 1972.
Are we allowing this? Is this okay?
As long as it's brief. I mean, it's all leading up to the 90s. So
it's background, background.
Yeah.
I suppose you both know. You heard of Grandstand.
Oh yeah.
And this actually relates to the sad passing of Dickie Davis.
Of course.
Last week,
yeah.
who did the ITV version of Grandstand, which was World of Sport.
World of Sport.
And they were like rivals in the 70s. Well, World of Sport always used to have some quirky sport they do, like lumberjack knot cutting from Canada or something like that, and things like that. Well, one time I was watching, it must have been about 11. In 72, I would have been 11. They were showing a game between the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Oakland Raiders when they had the Immaculate Reception.
That game?
By
Franco Harris.
Where Terry Bradshaw passed the ball, got tipped, Franco Harris caught the ball off his shoelaces and ran in for the go-ahead touchdown. So that was my very first, my introduction into American football. Then from then, I didn't really see any of it again until Channel 4, about 1980, 81, said they were going to show highlights every week on the Sunday with Nicky Horn and Miles Aiken, who was an American chap. And they were going to show a weekly program of highlights. And this was a player strike shortened season. So there was only about 9 games, I think, altogether. But in the end, it was Washington and the Miami Dolphins who got to the Super Bowl in Pasadena. So that's how I became a Washington fan, because they were like, the first team. They showed a lot of them in that season. As you know, I probably told you, stayed up all night. Probably still got the video in the attic. I recorded it.
Well, if you can dig it out, I can digitise that for you now.
That'd be good.
Yeah,
that'd be good.
All right, nice one.
Yeah.
All right, get that in the book.
Yeah,
Lovely.
so that's how I got into it, and then it progressed. American football on Channel 4 carried on. They didn't show any live games, only the Super Bowl, right through the 80s.
This is Channel 4, and now Super Bowl.
Okay, let's put it in the man's first pass. We're stepping up manpower deep stroke and swing to the deep corner. That's the way to run it, boys! The way to run! You gotta have more conviction than that! First down by 2 feet. 2 feet, he's got it easy. He's got it easy. I can see. Get him, Daddy. Beat that rookie.
And then, as you know, then the American football started coming over to this country just for exhibition games, just like pre-season for games. So first one I went to was 89. And then after that, another 4 in a row.
So, Glyn, that's how you got into the sport and how you got into watching it. But it must have been difficult keeping up with the sport throughout the late 80s and then into the 90s when there was so little coverage of it. It wasn't big in this country, in the UK.
Yeah.
And there weren't many outlets. So how did you manage to follow it?
There's a radio station. It's called the American Forces Network, I think. You should be able to tune in, but you have to like turn the aerials round and like at in a very certain space, and you could get it very, very faintly, but you get very, very quiet, and you had your earphones in. You could actually hear a game. So that's how I really just kept into it. And also, they did actually start producing the American football paper around that sort of, because you can see there, it's issue 607. So it had been going quite a while. So I don't think it's, I'm pretty sure it's not going anymore. So that's basically how I did it. And also there was Football Digest as well, a little magazine from America. And I actually used to import it. Like, only a few issues in the end because it cost too much. But that's really all you could do. You could either, get these papers, get some magazines, and listen on the radio very faintly. Just try and keep in touch with what was going on and your favourite players and things like that. So that's really how it happened.
Great. Just for the listeners, we've got a copy here of First Down football newspaper from Saturday, January the 31st, 1998. And it's got a smiling John Elway on the cover as he holds up the Super Bowl trophy that he's waited 15 seasons to win. And Alex, you said this was one of the first Super Bowls you remember, or the first or the second?
Yeah, I think the first one that I saw must have been before this, so the year before, so 97, when it was the Patriots against the Packers, I think. And then I remember this being the season after. I've watched very little American football in my life, and I've never really been that into it, but that was when I first sort of became aware of it, and I was quite interested in it at that point.
Before we get on to the American Bowls, which are the games that took place at Wembley Stadium, that you went to, the pre-season games, and we go through those, I want to talk about another aspect of the game which you managed to witness in the early 90s, and we got some tickets here, and I'll just read the ticket out here. American football match for the Bass Bowl, donated by Bass Charrington, and this is for Bath Gladiators versus the Halton Demons at Corsham Comprehensive School, which is the school that Alex and I both went to, and you went to, obviously, when you were young. Saturday the 23rd of March 1991, kickoff 2:30 p.m. So what do you remember about this? How did this come about? How did an American football match take place on the school field?
I have no idea. I think I went and saw them play at the Rec in Bath as well, and I think the promotions manager, Bob Turner, was actually from Corsham. But tell you the truth, I don't remember how I actually heard about it or anything. But obviously, there's no internet or anything like that. But it must have been word of mouth, or I just saw it. So maybe it was in one of the local papers or something like that. But I'm sorry, I don't really know. I don't really know.
Well, we've got ticket number 6,382 here, so there must have been a fair few people in attendance.
I don't think that many people there.
As you say, the promotions manager here, Bob Turner, he's included his phone number on the ticket, and it's an 0249 number.
Yeah.
So obviously,
I think he lived round the back of Nanny at one time.
That's going to mean nothing to anybody else.
I know. I don't want to give Nanny's address away.
No,
I
of course
don't
not.
hold people.
Exactly. But, thinking that Bob Turner still lives there, they might be able to get a ticket.
Well, he's not there anymore. He moved. That's
right. Right. Just a couple of other things to note on this ticket. A couple of other attractions available on the day. The GWR Roadshow with Andy Westgate. That starts at 12:30. A performance by the Norton Radstock Starlette Majorettes. And a beer tent open between 12 p.m. and 7 p.m. So there you go. Absolutely superb.
And then the Majorettes are probably in there later, weren't they? Having a few pints.
I would imagine so. Yeah, all kicking off. And then you also then went to the Bass Bowl 2 the following year.
Yeah. I got a complimentary ticket on this one.
Oh, wow. Yeah. You got a comp from Bob Turner.
But as you can see, the events sort of went a bit downhill.
Oh, yeah. So
you've got a school fete.
Yeah.
A car boot sale.
There's just a general thing here that says sideshows.
Sideshows.
Who knows what that is?
They've still got the beer tent. You're all right. And bouncy castles and much more. Much more.
Well,
so what the hell that was, I've got no idea.
We always put that in our episode descriptions, and there very rarely is much more. So I hope that the Norton Radstock Starlette Majorettes weren't relegated to being a sideshow.
I think look at them, so they're still going.
After the way they carried on in the beer tent from the year before, they probably weren't allowed to come.
It's probably a banning order coming into force. Yeah. But no, very interesting to know that a fairly high profile, you would have to say, American football match took place on our school field. I mean, presumably they just used the rugby posts, I would imagine.
I presume so. Yeah.
But
because I said they played at the Bath Rec as well, so obviously they did it. But they have got the website for the Gladiators is still up. They're not going anymore.
Okay.
But it's still up there, and they give all the games they played in, because they were in Division 2 or something, whatever it was at the time. So yeah, all the information, all the stats and everything is still up there.
Okay, so a little bit of American football comes to Corsham. How about that?
Really, yeah, it's really hard to imagine an American football match going on with some fairly established teams just being played in a provincial town's secondary school playing field. It's really hard to imagine, but it's cool that it happened.
I guess they had to find, like I said, they weren't going to be able to play at Bath Rec every time. I think that was just like a one-off. I think it might have been. So they had to find like schools or something with rugby pitches, so they could use the posts and the whistle thing. So I think they played at Lansdowne as well.
Right.
Obviously played away as well, places, but they had to find these sports pitches with the posts on, and obviously be allowed to play on there and not ruin the pitch too much. So there you go.
Well, I hope the Springfield Centre had some car parking marshals in place that day. That's all I can say.
Yeah, I wonder who provided their bollards.
There's only one person for that job. So let's move on then to the more high-profile games that took place in the UK in the 90s. The American Bowls, as you've mentioned.
Yeah.
You went to quite a fair few of these. We'll kick off with the American Bowl that took place in 1990. This was on August the 5th at Wembley Stadium, and it's the Oakland Raiders versus the New Orleans Saints.
That's right, yes. I don't know how we heard about this. It must have been in one of the football papers, and I persuaded two of my friends, Chris Jordan and Mike Wilkins, Hedge, as we used to call him, to go up. And Chris had a Dodge pickup truck, which we went up in. As you could sit 3 people in the cab, so that was good. Yeah, we went up there, took some beer with us, and what we do, we park up and just sit in the back of the on the pickup for hours. It seemed like waiting for the gates to open. But there was like loads of people about. You had obviously American forces people there from Lake and Heath and places like that, Mendenhall, and they'd be playing football in the car park until they got filled up, of course. So I always remember that. I think I can't remember if I said this before about other things where when you go to Wembley, they used to park you like, come here, stop there. But when you come out, there was nobody there to show you out. So everybody was trying to get out at the same time. And in the end, we used to just sit in the back of the van in the pickup and just wait till everybody went. So we were there for about 2 hours, just waiting until everybody left, and then we could get out there. And we always lost our way coming out. So that was good. Anyway, back to American football. What I remember about that game was, as soon as it finished, it's funny about the ending, they all ran out of Wembley Stadium. They didn't go back to changing rooms. They just went out of the Wembley, because you see the doors open and you can see outside, and they just got all in their buses and buggered off. So I don't know if they just went straight back to the airport or what.
On the plane in their helmets and cleats.
They did. I tell you, they did not go back to the changing rooms. They just went straight out, and it was so funny. Sort of, I can't believe they did that. But they must have been anxious to get home, I guess. So so that's what I remember about the first one.
So we've got the 1991 edition then. I don't know. It's only got the helmets on the tickets. So I can't tell.
And the Philadelphia Eagles.
Okay, and this is on the 28th of July, 1991. And these are all for £15 entry, by the way.
It's at the last one,
I should say. Very, very reasonable.
Yeah.
So the 1991 edition.
Yeah. Again, myself, Chris, and Mike went up in the Dodge, and we did basically exactly the same thing as we did before. And I think that was quite a good game, because a lot of these games can be they're exhibition pre-season games, so you might get the superstars come out for one series of downs, and then after that they just bring on the people they've been drafted in, like a new quarterback they'd be drafted in and see how they get on. So you didn't really sort of see the superstars of the game for all that much, but I think they were quite feisty games. They could be. People used to say, the crowd be shouting defense, offense, all sort of thing, all the time. So yeah, and of course the Buffalo Bills, they'd reached the Super Bowl in 1990, and then they carried on to get to the next 3 Super Bowls, 4 Super Bowls in a row in the 90s, and they didn't win one. And they were obviously the best team all those 4 years, but they just couldn't win the big game.
Mm-hmm.
And it was so sad because there's some great players. You had Jim Machine Gun Kelly, Dow Telly.
You should have been Alex Machine Gun Greenwood. I wish I'd seen that one. Sorry, mate.
Bruce Smith, Thurman Thomas, I should say. These great players, and they never won a Super Bowl. It's such a shame because they were the best team for those 4 years, really, in the league, but they just couldn't go over the finishing line to win it.
Was this the one where you ran into the American fans in the car park and you offered them some of your Miller Lite?
Oh, it might have been. It's one of these games. God knows which one it was.
And they reacted very violently.
They said, "Hey, we got some real American beer, Miller Lite." Oh, well, that's shit, sort of thing, So, but they still drank it, so it was all right.
Oh, well, there we are.
Yeah,
then, yeah.
They still had it. So yeah. We had some fun times there. Yeah, it was good.
Okay, so 92 then, and then you get to see your team in action in 1992.
Oh, Washington, yes. Yeah. And of course, Washington had beat the Buffalo Bills in the Super Bowl, so the Buffalo Bills lost again.
Mm-hmm.
And again, and the 49ers come over, obviously, for this game. And it was great to see the great Joe Montana played in that game. Again, maybe 1 or 2 series of downs before another great player come on, Steve Young, I think it was, who took over from him for the 49ers eventually. And also we had Mark Rippon, who played for Washington in the Super Bowl. He won the MVP in the Super Bowl. So again, it was great to see my team, although we did lose that game. I think it was 15-17 or something like that.
Close thing then.
Yeah, But again, like I said, it's just an exhibition game. It's just to see how players fare in the heat of battle, and who's going to make the roster and who's not. And also I saw Joe Gibbs, the legendary Washington coach, who incidentally won 3 Super Bowls with 3 different quarterbacks, and nobody's done that before.
Oh, okay.
So there you
go.
Or since, I should say. But yeah, it was great to see my favourite team out there. But unfortunately, I'd say we lost the game. But there you go. It's just the way it is.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes.
I was just going to say it's cool that there were big names that played in these matches. It wasn't just the sort of B team who came over to the UK for the for the preseason match. It's interesting that they did bring over some of these star names. I suppose there's a chance it could have been contracted or it was necessary for them to do it in order to get the punters in. And
it may have been. I mean, I don't really know, but I got free a lot of these players that hey, you've gone to London. Hey, I've never been to London before, so they might wanted to come anyway, sort of thing. True. It's really a testing ground for the players they've drafted and ones they've got on free agency to come in and show what they can do. Obviously, they play other preseason games back in America. Yeah, it was good to see these big players, especially somebody like Joe Montana, who won the Super Bowl a few times himself already, and see him come out and play. Yeah, it was very, very good. Yeah.
So the final one then, and we've got the ticket tour here, I should say. You're very good at sort of archiving these things. I think I've taken that from you as I've
I think so. Yeah.
As I've grown up, because I keep hold of a load of useless old stuff as well. But it all comes in handy when we record these podcasts.
Yeah.
So the final one we've got here is the American Bowl for '93. This is the Cowboys versus the Lions. The first thing I notice about this ticket is that it's jumped up £10 from the previous year.
Yeah.
So it's now £25 to get in. Which is a bit of a jump in 1 year.
It's cost of living,
maybe not by today's standards. I don't know. But yeah, so this is the final one. Any memories of this? Is this the one that you had to drive to yourself?
Yeah, because for some reason I don't know why Chris and Mike didn't want to go to this one. I don't know why. Maybe I should have thought, well, I'll give it a miss. But for whatever reason, I wanted to go, so I asked my boss if he wanted to come with me, Nobby Bush. He said yes, and I thought, oh, good. That means he can drive up there. And of course, when it come to it, I'm not driving up there. You are. Oh, no. Because I had a little 1.1 Fiesta, never been over 60 miles an hour before. Don't think I'd been on the motorway probably before in it. And because I was shitting. Oh, sorry, can I say that?
Yeah, I think that's fine.
Right. So I was really scared of going up there. Cause obviously I've been with Chris in the Dodge, but you don't really take a notice where you go in or a whistle thing. So of course no sat nav in those days or anything like that. So it was more of a rig on the trail. I think Nobby knew basically how to get there. He'd been to Wembley a few times to see England play.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, and so up in my little Fiesta, we got there all right, got parked up, but then we proceeded to have a barbecue. We took one of those disposable barbecues, so we had a couple of burgers on there, and then we wrapped. He brought them a couple of bananas wrapped in tin foil, put them on the barbecue. I don't know why, and hot bananas. I don't know. Have
you ever heard of that before?
I've heard of a hot banana. I think that's quite a popular thing these days. You put a bit of chocolate in there as well. You've got a hot banana chocolate thing.
But I don't think we had anything to put with it. I don't think so. Anyway, I can't remember. It was
the early days of the hot banana craze.
Yeah, it must have been.
But you're a pioneer, Glyn.
Oh.
You and Nobby, you pioneered the hot banana.
Yeah, I mean, they had these tailgate parties in America. When they go to the car park outside the game, but I don't think anybody was doing that really there. But yeah, we had this little disposable barbecue going. What I remember is you got my T-shirt now, haven't you? From that
yes,
game?
I got all the T-shirts. Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
Well, funny enough, we bought the T-shirt. And Nobby reminded me of this today because I said, well, I was doing this tonight. He said, "Remember that T-shirt you bought?" I said, "Oh yeah." I said, Stu wears it now." He said, "Well, do you remember the bloke getting chased?" I said, "No." He said, "Yeah." He said, "Because obviously it was a dodgy T-shirt. It wasn't official merchandise."
Right.
He said, "You bought it off him. It was like a £5 or whatever it was." And then about half hour now, you saw the bloke running past, and he said, like 3 security guards running after him, and because he's selling dodgy merchandise on the premises. So they were.
So you bought a Moody T-shirt? Wow.
Yeah, they must have done. So yeah. But that was a good game. The Lions ain't particularly a brilliant team. They haven't been for years, but that wasn't too bad a game. That was unfortunately the last one I ever went to. But like I said, it was an experience driving up there, driving back, in the dark as well. God knows how I did it. I just
still wake up in a cold sweat thinking about it now.
I just don't know how I did it. I do remember though when you sat in the stadium. Nobody said. He said you had to stand up every 10 seconds. Hey, and the whistle,
I love the image of this sort of tailgate barbecue party in the parking lot, as they'd say, and the Wessex equivalent. So you've got a giant Ford truck and then a big Dodge Ram, and then in between, sandwiched in between is a little 1.1 Fiesta with a little disposable barbecue.
Yeah, that's what it was. So we were just sort of just sat there for a couple of hours doing that. Yeah, it was like I said, it was a bit an experience that day. Cause obviously, like I said, I was driving and I wasn't too sure about where I was going or what I was doing or anything like that. But we survived. Got home about. I'll tell you one thing we always used to do was on the way back, because we used to get back so late, we stop at Membry Services, Membry Services Station, and we always just stop there for get something to eat, because obviously it's over in 24 hours, so and so we get home about 3 o'clock in the morning eventually. That was good days, good times.
So that's the American Bowls, Glyn. Do you have any other recollections or memories of American football life and fandom in the 90s?
Like I said, I used to go with my two mates, but they weren't really big into football. They just went along for the hell of it, sort of thing. I'd say I used to get all the newspapers, the magazines, but I was basically around here. I seemed to be the only one who was into it. Obviously, you had the people in Bath, but played for the Bath Gladiators, places like that. I think it was a team in Swindon called the Swindon Steelers as well, as I remember. But even at work, I was the only one really who watched it or talked about it or anything like that. So it was a strange one in a way, because I thought more people would be into it the more it come on, but no, not really.
Actually, Glyn, I wanted to ask you about the European American Football League.
Yeah.
Or NFL Europe, as I think it was later called. Did you ever have any interest in that? Because that obviously would have played at British grounds.
Well,
through the 90s.
there was it was quite a big league at one time, because again a lot of the players who didn't make the draft in America would come over, who weren't drafted in America would come over and play here. And we had the London Monarchs, of course. You had the Barcelona Fire, I think it was. You had a few teams in Germany as well. Amsterdam as well had a team, and I think the Monarchs won it a couple of times. Again, it used to be in the First Down newspaper a lot. I think that was more of a summer league, but yeah, that was quite a big thing. They didn't show it a lot here, I don't think. I think they played at Wembley, I think, the Monarchs. So I'm quite surprised at that, because that's quite a big stadium to fill out. But it might have been quite popular. I can't remember.
I was looking into it actually, and it was more popular at the start, and then it gradually declined. So I think they started off maybe at Wembley, and then the attendances weren't really strong enough, so they had to gradually decrease. And then they played I think they played at Selhurst Park, and then they played at, not Selhurst Park, sorry, the Crystal Palace Sports Stadium.
Yeah, you're right. I do remember that vaguely now. Yeah.
I think I can kind of, there's a sort of feeling of slight desperation, I think, about the idea of creating this European League, of them trying to build up popularity for it in this country, but obviously it didn't work out. And I think maybe the fact that it attracted players who weren't the real deal, maybe spelt the end for that. Whereas now, obviously, you get NFL matches that are actually part of the regular season coming over to Wembley, and that fills Wembley Stadium. I think British fans want to see the real thing, don't they? If they're into NFL, they want to see the NFL.
Yeah, like you say, I think that they I'm not quite sure if the European League was backed by NFL. I'm not quite sure, and they were just trying to see how it went. And because there was talk about having a franchise here in London at one point. Now, whether they wanted to see how it went, and was there going to be enough interest in it, I don't know. Maybe now there would be. Maybe not play at Wembley. I think they play at Tottenham Ground, don't they?
Yeah.
Right,
yeah.
So, but whether they could do that now, I mean, I don't know. It's been a long time since they had new franchises. But obviously there'll be other countries who would be interested as well, in having a franchise. Maybe somewhere like Canada or Mexico, where they don't have to go so far. But yeah, it would be an interesting idea if they could do that. It would be quite good. But like you say, I think some of the players did make it into the NFL who played in the European leagues, but not a great deal of them. And of course, there have been some British players in the NFL as well over the years, especially in the 90s as well, I think. So some people have made inroads into playing in American football.
I know one thing about the London Monarchs, and that's that former Tottenham striker Clive Allen had a few games as a kicker, punter. Yeah.
Probably
nice.
kicker, I expect.
Which was a bizarre turn of
events.
events.
Well, funny enough, you say that. There was a lot of quite a few English players in the NFL were kickers, obviously because of the football. They had Mick Luckhurst, who actually become a presenter on the Channel 4 football programme, and a bloke called John Smith, who played for the New England Patriots as well. He became a presenter eventually, but there don't seem to be that many British players over there now, even kickers.
Well, now on 4 for the next hour and a half or so, settle back in company with Mick Luckhurst for live American football.
Tonight, it's a battle of the airways as the Miami Dolphins play host to the reigning AFC East champion Buffalo Bills. At quarterback for them, it's Jim Kelly. He's often controversial, but normally effective. If he can click both on and off the field with his teammates, the Bills could certainly be the team to chase in the AFC this year. For the Dolphins, there's no question as to who they turn to for leadership. Top gun, Dan Marino, the fastest release in the East. Combine him with Sammy Smith's league-leading 159 yards rushing last week, and a lot of people are saying that 1990 could be the year of the Dolphin. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the second week of live coverage from the 1990 NFL season. In tonight's program, we'll be going live to Miami for the climax of our main game, and Gary will have updates on the rest of today's matches, and he'll also have news from around the league.
Glyn, it's been an absolute pleasure to speak to you tonight about your experiences at the American Bowls and following American football throughout the 90s. Will you come back the next time we need you to come on and talk about something?
As long as it's like rock music or something like that next time.
Okay, hair metal in the 90s.
That's right, we'll do classic rock in the 90s.
Okay, it's on. It's on. Later in the year, we'll get that done. Glyn, thanks very much.
That's right, mate. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
cheers,
you, Alex.
Glyn.
Thanks again to Glyn for coming in and talking to us about American football in the 90s. It seems like a different world, doesn't it, compared to the coverage and the amount of access that the British fans can get today. It really does seem worlds apart, doesn't it?
Yeah, it really does. It really bloomed, I think, in the late noughties and early 2010s, didn't it? And now it's everywhere. There was a lot of coverage on the BBC. There'd be a regular NFL show, and I think that's maybe on a different channel now. But yeah, back when I had a bit of an interest in it, it was all late night Channel 5 stuff. As with all the American sports, there'd be a slot, late night Channel 5, all with the same American co-presenters. Seem to do all the sports. But now, yeah, like you say, it's very mainstream, and all these regular matches in UK football stadiums that attract huge crowds. So yeah, definitely a different world. I mean, I don't think you'd see American football played on Corsham School playing fields these days.
I don't think you would, no, but more's the pity.
Yeah.
That we've moved away from a game just popping up on the Corsham School field.
Those majorettes have got nowhere to play now, have they? Got nowhere to do.
No, that's exactly it. The bottom's fallen right out of that game.
Yeah.
Right, that just about wraps us up for this time. Alex, where can everybody get in touch with us and let us know their thoughts on American football in the 90s, or indeed anything else that we have ever talked about on the podcast?
They can find us on our link tree, which is linktr.ee/allright90s podcast. That's 90s, which is 90s. Or you can just click on the link in the description for this episode, where it'll take you straight there without having to type anything in.
Please do get in touch with anything you see fit. Okay, that just about wraps us up for this time. Do keep your eyes peeled for our next episode in a couple of weeks. We'll be interviewing a very special guest, and more on that in the coming days. But until then, it's goodbye from me. I'm just off to speak to Bob Turner to get some tickets for the next Bath Gladiators match.
And it's goodbye from me. I'm just off to put a hot banana on the barbecue.
Ta-ta for now.
Bye.